As we take a look at some of the things that China is doing in the international airspace in the region and the international waterways, that's very concerning, and we would hope that they would alter their actions. But since they haven't yet, I'm concerned about at some point having an incident that could very, very quickly spiral out of control.
Does it mean that we keep saying that right now with some of these provocative actions in China, the latest incident of buzzing a U.S. military surveillance plane over the South China Sea? It got so close, it actually shook the surveillance plane. Of course, we want to talk to the Chinese about that, but to add double provocative chutzpah, whatever you want to call it, they have zero interest in talking to us. Enter Leon Panetta, the former U.S. Defense Secretary, CIA Director, former White House Chief of Staff. If he can't solve this crisis, it can't be solved. Anyway, Leon, always good to see you. What do you make of this? And the Chinese, and even after this incident, essentially saying we have no reason to talk?
Look, there's no question that the relationship between the United States and China has become very tense for a lot of reasons, going back to the balloons and now what you're seeing in terms of some of the provocation on those flights, as well as a number of other things. Having said that, I think it is important to try to find at least some lines of communication with the Chinese in order to avoid something that could result in some type of conflict. So I hope that the White House and the Defense Department continue their efforts to try to at least set up some lines of communication with the Chinese. Look, we need to be tough with China. No one questions that. We've got to draw lines on the Chinese, and we have to operate from a position of strength.
But we're not, right? We're not,
Secretary. We do need to
That's
have
the rap
the ability to communicate.
That we're not doing that. I'm not saying that we're groveling here, but we are trying to make sure cooler heads prevail and the Chinese don't do something crazy. But we keep trying for this. They keep ignoring our entreaties. Sometimes there's a conversation between a finance minister and his U.S. counterpart, but that's about where it ends. And I'm just wondering, what does that tell you? What does that signal to you?
It tells me that President Xi is trying to still figure out the relationship, if you want to know the truth. I think he's trying to decide what direction he's going to go in. He's now obviously developed a strong relationship with Russia, but at the same time, Xi kind of operates on his own timetable. He's got to protect the economy there. He's got to be able to protect his strength within China itself. And so it just seems to me that Xi is going to be very careful about doing anything that could result in a conflict with the United States. I think he's learned the lesson from Ukraine. It's not going well for Russia. He doesn't want to fall into the same box with Taiwan. So right now, I think the effort is make clear to China where the lines are, and then at the same time, try to see if you can pursue some line of communication.
But we're not doing that. And I just wonder whether provocative countries read the administration's non-response or, even the response to the balloon incident and some others that have occurred since, that we're soft. We don't care. We're not into this. Whether you want to go all the way back to Afghanistan and our pullout there, that they're reading that, maybe incorrectly, to your point, as we're befuddled and betwixt and soft. What do you say?
Neil, one thing I've learned throughout history is that tyrants act when they sense weakness. I think that's why Putin went into Ukraine, because he sensed weakness on the part of the United States, went into Crimea, didn't pay a price, went into Libya, didn't pay a price, went into Syria, didn't pay a price, engaged in a bold cyber attack on this country and didn't pay a price. I think that gave him the incentive to think that he could go into the Ukraine. And I think Xi is pretty much in the same box. Xi, for a period of time here, sensed weakness on the part of the United States and tried to take advantage of it. We've had to draw lines. Thank God we've drawn lines, certainly in the Ukraine with the United States and our NATO allies. We've drawn lines on China with regards to Taiwan. I think that was important to do. So it is important to show that the United States and our allies, that's an important combination. The United States and our allies are standing strong for what we believe in. And that's a good message to send to China and to other enemies around the world.
Do you think, though, that we have to be stronger, hit them in the wallet? Now, the fear, I get a sense, and I talk to many in Washington, is that we don't want tough economic measures or sanctions to boomerang back on us. Invariably, to get tough for the Chinese, they will. And should we be preparing the American people for that? That the only way the Chinese will understand that we're serious, besides getting more in their face militarily, or at least responding to a lot of these threatening actions, but to get in their face economically, to sanction more companies, to punish more provocative actions. But that would hit us, and we'd have to remind all Americans that you're going to pay more for a lot of goods, and it's for our own good and the world's good that you do.
Well, look, there's no question that I think the one thing that China fears the most is sanctions because of the impact it'll have on their economy. That's the one thing Xi wants to do, is to expand the economy and be able to go into markets around the world. And so that is a vulnerability on the part of China. And it does make sense for the United States, in terms of having a package of what steps we would take if China does something provocative. It does make sense to have sanctions as part of that response.
Leon Panetta, we'll see what happens. Always good catching up with you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.